This is going to be part of a two-part weight loss presentation, but we're talking about why we eat. And you are probably thinking, well, we eat because we're hungry, or we eat because we have to. But you're going to learn some things today, I think, that you might not often think about. So, today and for the rest of these presentations, we're talking about lifelong changes for lifelong health. And the way that we're doing that is we're using, I actually focus particularly on weight loss because I find that with weight loss, it's a way of transforming our health. For people who have the challenge of obesity, often with many chronic illnesses, obesity tends to cause health to get better and sometimes even reverse disease. This is my threefold approach for weight loss and also for health. Number one is not tools and techniques. I do presentations on weight loss and I see patients for weight loss. That's my clinical focus. And most people want to know the latest tools and techniques. Just tell me what to do. But often when people lose weight, they apply the tools and techniques, they end up just gaining the weight back again. So the first step is lifestyle and psychology changes. That's what we're going to talk about today, why we eat. Second step, identifying blockages to weight loss. And third step, tools and techniques. So we're going to talk about all three of these things throughout this series, but today we're talking about lifestyle and psychology changes. Those are the things that affect our health. And when we're thinking of making changes for health, we're hoping to making changes that are lifelong. We want lifelong changes for lifelong weight loss and lifelong health. These changes aren't temporary, so this is why it comes down to making changes where we're learning things that we can apply again and again and again. It's about sustainability. And that way, if we have to lose weight, we lose weight and we keep it off. Why is it important to talk about right now? Well, even Barbie gained weight during the pandemic. So Barbie herself is not in the health that she was in at the very beginning of the pandemic, let's say 3 years ago. Many people ask me, how can I lose weight and keep it off? I'll tell you that the secret to losing weight and keeping it off is, can't tell you that quickly. No, just kidding. Right now, I want you to think in your mind, what do you think the secret to losing weight and keeping it off is? Just keep it in your mind right now. See if you were right. I would say that the secret to losing weight and keeping it off is actually this. It is consistency. And it's also discovery. Discovery of what? Discovery of the reasons why you are eating the way that you are in the first place. And that's what we're going to discover today. Different reasons as to why we eat the way that we do. So why do we eat? Well, I will tell you a secret. You may be eating for reasons you don't even realize. Do you know often we are not eating because we are hungry? Sometimes we're eating for 4 or 5 main things we don't even realize. One of them is mood. For example, for some people, when their mood tends to go down, if they're feeling sad or emotional, or they've just experienced something where suddenly it was unexpected and their mood is low, sometimes when mood goes down, that's when food intake tends to go up. Mood goes down, food goes up. This is called emotional eating, but it's also known as stuffing our feelings. Does anyone here ever stuff their feelings? This is one of the reasons why we eat, but we don't realize that's why we're eating. And often, in those cases, we choose comfort foods. Another reason why we eat that we might not realize why we're eating. And this also comes down to food choices. We might be eating because we are experiencing stress. A lot of people stress eat. And even if you realize that you're stress eating, you might not realize why stress is causing you to eat. So we're going to talk about the biochemistry a little bit today. But it's interesting when it comes to stress, because a lot of us are trying to manage stress, and that way we don't progress, we don't eliminate the stress, but somehow the stress doesn't take us out. And even managing stress is stressful in itself. So the stress causes more stress, and stress tends to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So what is the stress response? Okay, we're going to Biology and Biochemistry 101 for a moment. The stress response is a response that I think God put into our brains and bodies to help us to get away from a threat. It is part of the autonomic nervous system, and it's known as fight or flight. It's a sympathetic response. People also say fight, flight, or freeze. Basically, as you can see from this picture, it's unlikely you're going to be attacked by a giant tiger while you're here in the church or you're watching online. Unlikely. I don't know where you are, but probably there are no wild tigers on the loose. But the point is, we respond the same way if it's a psychological threat. So with stress, it's a threat of some kind. It might be a bill that you get in the mail, and to you that's a financial threat. It might be, I don't know, a phone call from your boss and you've taken a sick day or something like that. In that case, it's a job threat. It might be your partner and you've had a bad argument, something of that sort. In that case, it is a relationship threat. So really, it doesn't matter when you're thinking of fight or flight in these dire circumstances, a car accident, or you're running away from a wild raccoon in your backyard at night, something like that. We're thinking physical threats, but it is any kind of threat. It's often, for me, driving on the 401. That's like a safety threat. And our bodies respond very quickly when we are in a threatened state. The interesting thing is we can experience that kind of threat. We can experience that kind of threat just sitting down and, we can experience that just sitting down and thinking, just through thinking. And if we're just sitting there and thinking, we might be feeling and thinking about thoughts that cause a sense of fear, a sense of anxiety, a sense of worriedness, and it might be about something from the present, something from the past. Not sure why it's doing this. Something from the present, something from the past, something from the future. The point is, our bodies respond the same. Whether it's present, past, or future, we can travel in our minds, and your body doesn't know the difference. If you're remembering something from 10 years ago, even if you're telling someone, do you ever notice when you're telling somebody something about something that happened? It could be an accident that happened 10 years ago. And the more you get into it as you're telling the story, the more riled up you get. This is because your body is secreting hormones of stress and chemicals of stress. Those main chemicals are cortisol and adrenaline. So this is actually a picture taken out of a physiology textbook. That thing in the center there is the anterior pituitary, is located in our brain. And just above that is the hypothalamus, also in our brain. Off to the two sides, those two things are actually our adrenal glands. They're located just above our backs, down here. And what happens when your body senses a threat? And I'll tell you, there's a reason why we're talking about this, because we're going to get back to why do we eat. When your body senses a threat, the hypothalamus sends a signal to the anterior pituitary. It's kind of like a sound the alarm signal. And your body senses, or we think of that threat, and normally we feel fear or scared. The amygdala, the emotion center, knocks on the door of the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus signals to the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary releases hormones that affect the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands then release cortisol and adrenaline. All of that, boom, 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 known as the HPA, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. That cascade happens in a flash. That's how quickly our body responds. If it is a threatening situation, it's great, Because in the short term, our heart rate starts pounding. This happens with people who have stage fright, and they might feel like all the people watching are a threat, or it's a threat to their self-image. Their heart starts pounding. Blood pressure goes up. Did you know that when you're stressed, your liver gets activated, and it quickly converts its stored sugar stores, which are in the form of glycogen, into glucose, and then that's pumped out into the blood. So your blood sugar level goes up when you feel threatened. And why? Because you're getting ready to run or to fight. You're usually, if it's that kind of state physically, about to do something. Your bronchioles dilate so you can get more air. There's changes in blood flow pattern. Did you know your eyes actually dilate when you're stressed? Isn't that amazing? We get tunnel vision, so we lose our peripheral eyesight. So if you're ever in let's say, a contentious conversation with someone, and they say, "Are you okay?" And you say, yeah, it's not bothering me, I'm okay. If they looked into your eyes, and they saw your eyes were dilated, they could tell, you're lying, actually, you're not okay. You feel threatened by this conversation. So even our eyes change so that we can be, and our blood pattern changes so we can be more alert, and we have an increased metabolic rate. All of that's amazing to get us out of the threatening situation. Okay, there's a positive and a negative. The negative is if we get stressed every single day, then we have a long-term stress response, meaning our bodies are holding on to more sodium by the kidneys. That means your blood pressure goes up. How many people here, if I could ask, but we are doing the blood pressure clinic after, how many people here have high blood pressure? Okay, not that many. We have a lot of relaxed people. That's great. Secondly, the proteins and the fats that we've eaten, they're converted into sugar, or they're broken down for energy, but when you don't use the energy, it is stored as fat. There's an increase in blood sugar, and if you're stressed often over time, that puts you at risk for type 2 diabetes. There's suppression of the immune system, and over time, that puts you at risk for viruses, diseases, etc. So stress is major. In the short term, it helps us. In the long term, it can lead to a lot of chronic illnesses. The interesting thing is when those chemicals, the adrenaline and the cortisol, are rushing through our bloodstream, we might not even know it. We might notice our heart is racing, it's hard to get clear thoughts, but often we might respond by looking to food instead to help us when we're feeling stressed. And this is called stress eating. Stress eating. For some people, when they're very stressed, they might not eat. For example, when I was studying at as Pastor William said, the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, during exam time, I could not eat. It was like for 2 weeks, I lost a lot of weight very quickly, but then I could eat after. But if you're chronically stressed, let's say you have a difficult relationship with your boss at work, that's chronic stress. Then after work, you might choose to eat something like this, which is pizza. So why do we eat what we eat? One of the reasons, as I said, emotional. Another one, stuffing our feelings. A third one, stress. If stress is always present, you can experience an overexposure to cortisol. Too much cortisol. The interesting thing about cortisol, it curbs functions that would be non-essential, it alters our immune system, and cortisol actually causes cravings. Cortisol causes cravings. Cortisol is an appetite. It actually influences and increases our appetite. So why are we eating? We might not realize it, but we're eating because cortisol's high. We keep getting these cravings to keep eating, and our appetite is kind of opened because we are stressed out. The other interesting thing about cortisol, if we're eating while we are stressed, then that extra, let's say all of that energy and those calories that we're not using, they tend to be deposited around one particular area of the body. I know for a lot of people, they have choices of where they want that to be deposited, but it's actually mostly deposited, as you can see in this picture, around the midsection. So when I have patients who come in, I actually just quickly take a look at their posture and their body, and if they have a lot of weight around the midsection, but then like thinner legs, thinner arms, I say they have too much cortisol. That says to me that their stress level is probably high. Why else do we eat? Maybe it's because stress is affecting our sleep. Have you ever said this? You're in bed, you're really tired, and you say to yourself, I can't sleep. And before you know it, you're thinking of what happened during the day, thinking about your job, thinking about your relationships, overthinking. We are too stressed. Poor sleep affects our immune function, it leads to weight gain, and it often leads to us eating more than we were expecting to. Why else do we eat? Well, as I mentioned, sometimes we are stress eating. I want to tell you a little bit about stress eating and how it affects the body. It's not just, it's two things. It's eating while you're stressed, and then eating also after you were stressed. So there was a study done where participants reported one or more stressors during the 24 hours previous to eating, such as having an argument with their partner, disagreement with a friend, trouble with children, or work-related pressures, and this is what they found. The group that had those stressful incidences, they burned 104 fewer calories than the non-stressed women in the 7 hours after they ate. So stress not only gives you the cue to eat more, but it causes your metabolism to slow down. This is one of the reasons why stressed eating can cause weight gain. Researchers say experiencing one or more stressful events the day before eating, just one high-fat meal, and normally we're going to that high-fat, starchy meal if we're stressed, can slow the body's metabolism so much, women could potentially see an 11-pound weight gain over the course of a year. 11 pounds. Now, you might say 11 pounds in 1 year, that's okay. Hopefully you're saying that's not okay. But some people think, it's okay. Think of 11 pounds in 3 years. That's 33 pounds. So why are we eating? We're eating because we're stressed. So what I'm going to talk about, not now, you have to come back tomorrow to find out what can we do to manage and eliminate stress. Today's about understanding why we're eating. Tomorrow we'll talk about the tools and techniques and the answers. But I'll give you some answers today, but we'll focus on more answers tomorrow. So I think that we can all say it's important to manage and address stress. I don't know if this is you when you're experiencing stress, but stress causes us to choose foods we wouldn't normally choose, and they are normally foods that are high in fat and high in sugar. That is stress eating. I think all of us want to avoid pain, but when it comes to health changes, we want instant results, don't we? We think if I change just for one day, boom, I'm going to feel better. I will fit into those pants that I haven't been able to fit into, but it takes a while. But for some people, we feel like making changes feels like I'm going to die if I change my diet. But one of the things that we need to do for better health is to change our diet. When I say diet, I don't mean going on a fad diet. I mean changing the foods that we eat. But changing the foods we eat is hard if we're stressed, or we're not handling our emotions well, or we have high cortisol, or we're not getting enough sleep. All of those are factors that make it difficult to make good food choices. So I know that I've experienced this next one. Why do we eat? And why do we eat in a way often where it's not how we want to eat? Why are we eating that way? Could it be just because you are tired? because you're not getting enough sleep. Everybody's going to yawn now. Because you're not getting enough sleep consistently over time, so you always feel tired. And that's often why we're making food choices that we're making. And they're not always the best food choices. Generally speaking, research has observed changes in weight when people get fewer than 5 hours of sleep. Fewer than 5 hours sleep. But generally speaking, people are able to maintain weight loss, or they don't gain weight if they're getting more than 7 hours of sleep. So optimally, if you would like to make changes in your health and changes in how you eat, then you want to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. If you're getting less than 5 hours of sleep at night, then most likely it would be hard to lose weight, or you're probably gaining weight. A major review found that short sleep duration increased the likelihood of obesity by 89% in children. In children. Kids are not getting enough sleep these days, and 55% in adults. I know that with my mom, going to bed early was very important, so we got lots of sleep as kids. I can't say that I've always kept it up as an adult. So the hours that I said was 5 hours of sleep puts you at risk for weight gain, or it makes it difficult to lose weight. 7 to 8 hours of sleep is optimal. They did one study where they allowed 16 adults just 5 hours of sleep per night for only 5 nights. 5 nights. They gained an average of nearly 2 pounds over the short course of that study. They gained 1.8 pounds in just 5 nights. That's how quickly a lack of sleep can affect us. So why are we eating? Because basically we're not getting high quality, uninterrupted sleep. So this isn't just the duration. This is uninterrupted sleep, meaning maybe you go to bed on time, but because you've been drinking just before bed, I tell all my patients, do not leave water on the bedside table. A lot of people take a few sips because they feel like their mouth is dry, and then what happens? 4 to 5 hours after that, maybe 4 hours, they're waking up to use the bathroom. And then if they fall asleep, a few hours after that, they're waking up to use the bathroom. And then they wake up in the morning and they feel tired. And then you make poor food choices. So we want high quality sleep. Did you know that poor sleep can increase your calorie intake by increasing late night snacking? When people aren't getting high quality sleep, they tend to snack at night. It also causes us to choose bigger portion sizes than we normally would. And if you're not getting high quality sleep, it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. So you wake up late, and then you just have time to literally, like this person, grab something on the go. And the things that we grab on the go, muffins, bagels, scones, they are not donuts, I hope not, but those are not healthy options for breakfast. So why are we eating what we're eating? Because we're not getting that high quality sleep. Next, why are we eating what we're eating? Well, it's time for that to go. Okay, it's supposed to run across screen, but it's sugar. We're often eating what we are eating because we are addicts. Yes, it sounds like a strong statement, but hear me out. We might not realize it, but why do we eat? We eat because we are addicted to sugar. Did you know that sugar affects our brains in a very similar way to heroin and cocaine? Can you believe it? Heroin and cocaine. The brain actually uses half of all the sugar energy in the body, so do not overfeed the brain with sugars. It sets off a response called the addiction response, also known as the dopamine response, which is similar to what is set off, not as much, but similar with heroin and cocaine. When I'm talking about sugar, most people hopefully will say, well, I limit my sugar. But remember, sugar is one of the most common ingredients in processed foods. Processed foods. So one of the first things you can do if you want to improve your health, improve your eating, or lose weight, it is to eliminate processed foods. If it was made in a factory, if it comes in a crinkly bag, it probably didn't fall off a tree. So eliminating processed foods, that's a really good first step. Even if those foods say low sugar on them, most processed foods still have chemicals in them that actually drive us to eat. How many people here have opened some, like a bag of potato chips and only had 2 potato chips? If you have, I applaud you. Basically impossible. It's when it comes to processed foods, we eat much more than we would than if it were in its natural form. We would more likely get full on potatoes than potato chips, or corn than corn chips. We get caught up in a cycle, especially with foods that are high in sugar, and this cycle is called the addiction cycle. What happens with the addiction cycle? You eat high sugar foods, and you say, ooh, tastes so good, and instantly your brain's happy. Your brain at that point is actually secreting a neurotransmitter, a chemical called dopamine. Your blood sugar spikes very, very quickly, and then your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, and then the insulin actually causes the sugar to be kind of driven into the cells, and then your blood sugar drops rapidly, and suddenly you feel tired. Insulin stores fat in the waist and body, and then you have lower sugar levels. You get a craving. Your body thinks that you need more glucose, and then you tend to look for something sugary, and that's high fat, high sugar, and you go through the entire cycle again and again and again. Now, I mentioned a chemical called dopamine. And dopamine is what's secreted when we eat sugar. It's what's secreted when you, with certain recreational drugs, heroin, cocaine, etc. It's what's secreted when you do something incredibly pleasurable, gambling. So why is dopamine working against us? Well, there are a few key elements. The brain's reward and pleasure drug, dopamine, connects with our memory. Your brain really remembers something pleasurable. It really remembers how great something felt, and then a heavy memory is laid down. This is part of the addiction cycle. Our brains are wired to increase the odds that we're going to repeat that pleasurable activity. This is why depending on your willpower usually doesn't work. I mean, some people are so, strongly willed that they can pull themselves away and out of eating certain foods, but our brain's neurochemistry is making it hard for us to not eat those sugary pleasure foods. Whenever the reward circuit is activated, a burst of dopamine signals something important is happening that needs to be remembered. Our brain responds with this dopamine surge that I just described to sugar. Therefore, it is time to read the ingredients list when we go to, let's say, the grocery store. And there's sugars in things we're not even expecting. Sugars in yogurt, sugar in crackers. Did you know there's a lot of sugar in ketchup? I didn't know that until I was like 25, and I ate ketchup like every day. So how can you avoid this? Number one, you want to eliminate processed foods. Number two, always read the labels. And when I say the labels, I don't mean the labels on the front. This is my saying. The big print tells a story, but the small print tells the truth. So the big print that's on the front is going to say something like all of the hot marketing words. Natural, gluten-free, even if it never ever had gluten in it, but people tend to buy. 100%, the word's 100%. Even if it's a blend, when you read the ingredients, it says 100% on the front. And people tend to buy because of these catchphrases. Turn it over and read the small print. That's when you'll know the truth of what is in it. This is something that I had taken from a cereal. I don't remember, but it probably said natural on the front. But when you read the small print on the back, the second ingredient is sugar. When you go down to the second line, you'll see the word sugar. The third line, you see the word sugar. When you get down near the bottom, modified molasses, and the last thing that's cut off there, high fructose corn syrup. This cereal is probably promoted as healthy, but the truth is it is mostly sugar. When you're reading the ingredients, they list the ingredient that has the highest quantity closer to the beginning and the lowest quantity at the end. Therefore, this is mostly rice and sugar. And our brains would respond with that dopamine surge, like, wow, this is so good. That's why you always get the same brand again and again and again, because you love it, but you love it because your brain secreted a lot of dopamine that's driving you to eat it. So I would recommend that when you go to the grocery store, avoid the middle aisle. Go to the right where there's the produce, go to the left, maybe frozen stuff, and avoid what's in the center. But if you go there, prepare to go like you're going to the library. Get ready to read the small print. One of the other things that we can do is we can break up with sugar. Breakups are never easy. They are tough. And breaking up with sugar is actually breaking up with a chemical that has been part of an addiction cycle in our brain. Did you know that you can go through withdrawal from a person as part of a breakup? You can go through withdrawal from sugar. So, but it's a perfect time, no time like the present. Give sugar and give pop, if you happen to be drinking pop, give it the goodbye squeeze. So another step towards better health, breaking up with sugar. And once you do that, you might not end up doing this, because you won't want that late night big piece of cake. And have you noticed whenever you say, I'm just going to have a sliver, that if you do have a sliver, normally you take more, you have a sliver, and after that you say, I'm just going to have another sliver. And then you might say, just one more sliver. Before you know it, you've eaten a big piece of cake, but you fooled yourself by having slivers. So one of the things that helps with this, going to bed a little bit earlier. Because when you're staying up late, usually it means it's been a long time since dinner, and you tend to want a late night snack. I'm going to end with just a few more ideas about why we eat. According to psychology, there is a question that you have to ask yourself. Very important. And I really like giving homework. I used to be a teacher for 5 years in Asia. I gave a lot of homework. I give my patients homework. So I'm going to give you homework, but I won't know if you did it or not. But the homework is this, to ask yourself this question. So according to psychology, there's a question you have to ask yourself when it comes to eating. And this question is this: what is food to you? Why do we eat what we eat? It's often based on our relationship with food. Did you know that you do have a relationship with food? Sometimes for some people, food is about bonding. If they're eating with a friend, or if they're with a friend, they want to eat together, because eating together kind of bonds that relationship. When I was nearly 50 to 60 pounds heavier than I am now, there were certain foods that I always went to eat really sugary desserts with. And we bonded over, there's such a thing as trauma bonding. This was like trauma food bonding. We bonded over desserts. So whenever we got together, we would go and just completely pig out. And I realized that if I wanted to lose weight, I really couldn't hang out with that friend as often. And eventually I had to say, you know what, we can't keep doing this. Like, we can't keep eating these chocolates together. That was part of our relationship. What was food to me? Food to me was part of bonding. What is food to you? Often food is pleasure. It's a source of pleasure and joy, and for some people, it's the greatest pleasure that they experience in their lives. And that's part of food addiction, which we're going to talk about coming up. What is food to you? For some people, I hope for a lot of people here, food is about longevity. Food is woohoo. Food is medicine. For some people, food is the fountain of youth. Food can be any of these things. So I want to encourage you to ask yourself this question and write down the answer. The question is, what is food to me? It could be bonding, could be pleasure, it could be the fountain of youth. It could remind you of your childhood. Food is nostalgia. So food is so much more than just what we eat when we're hungry. It's interesting because food could also be a friend. And food sometimes is what we use when we're feeling bored. Is this you? Whoops. Is this you? Have you been dating your refrigerator for the last 2 years? What is food to you? Food can be a boyfriend. Food can be a girlfriend. It keeps you company. You have great conversations. Never talks back. So please think a little more about that question. The reason why I wanted to start this series with this question, why do we eat? Because I wanted to start with the reasons why it's difficult to change our health. We might be eating the way that we're eating for some of these reasons, and we don't even realize it. I also think that it's about time that we stopped fighting the battle of the bulge, and it stopped fighting with ourselves to try to get healthier. We're fighting often because we don't realize why we're eating the way that we're eating. But when you realize, I'm eating the way that I'm eating because I'm stressed, or I'm feeling emotional, or I'm not getting enough sleep, or I choose food for pleasure instead of for nutrition, then it's easier to make those changes. I want to end with some tips for better digestion, but these are also tips that may help with making better food choices, and also tips that could help with weight loss. Tip number 1, I would say that digestion begins in the brain. The right mindset is the beginning of better digestion. It's also the beginning of making better choices. When we're very present and we're relaxed, we tend to make better choices. And also, our digestive juices are flowing, etc., when we're in that parasympathetic or relaxed state. So the right mindset. How do we get into the right mindset? Well, number 1, you could pray before you eat, or take a few moments to breathe intentionally before eating. We're going to talk tomorrow about breathing and weight loss. Did you know that breathing can help with weight loss? The easiest thing to do. So take a few moments to breathe intentionally before eating. This will help you to make better food choices. It can help with digestion. Number 2, place thankfulness in your mind before eating. This is part of mindful eating. When we're thankful for what we're eating, then we tend to eat slower, and we tend to make better food choices as well. Number 3, slow it down. Eat slowly. Do not swallow until it's like applesauce in our mouths. Did you know that your saliva contains an enzyme called salivary amylase? That enzyme actually helps to break down carbohydrates, and that's the beginning of digestion in the mouth. But if you're eating the food and swallowing it down quickly, the saliva doesn't have the chance to attack that food. The amylase in our saliva also is antibacterial, so it kind of cleans the food up before you swallow it. Pretty amazing. So eat slowly. Number 4, put your fork or your spoon down if you're finding it hard to eat slowly. This is called taking a pause. So if you're a really fast eater and you're finding it hard, take a pause. Put your fork down, take a moment, pick up your fork again, put your fork down. This is a way of kind of training yourself to eat a little bit slower. Number 5, do not discuss contentious things during mealtime. This is a tough one because mealtime is often the time where you're all around the table, and it's a great opportunity to bring up all those things that are bothering you that you've wanted to talk to that person about. But when you do that, everybody at the table, if there's a table and 5 people are there and 2 people are arguing, everyone at the table is going to feel stressed. And when we feel stressed and we're eating, then we are actually not digesting that food well. Stress causes your mouth to dry up. We don't have a lot of saliva. It causes the acid in the stomach to be low, so we're not going to digest protein well. So don't have those tense or intense conversations at the table during mealtime. Number 6, wait 15 minutes, then go for a walk after eating. Do not lie down after eating. First, you're not burning the calories off, but secondly, it puts you at risk for heartburn. So after you've been eating, you want to wait a little bit and then go for a walk. And I'll end with this final tip. eat until you are 2/3 full. When I was very overweight, I always ate until I was really, really, really full. That was like my cue. But the truth is, it takes about 20 minutes until we feel full. So if you eat until you're 2/3 full, most likely your stomach has already stretched. And if you just wait a little bit, you will feel full. And finally, do not drink while eating. Why not? Because we have that salivary amylase in our saliva that's going to attack our food and help us to digest carbohydrates. But if you're just drinking, your saliva doesn't get the opportunity to digest the food before you take a drink. That is it for today. If you remember these things, do your homework, and take these tips, I would say, whoops, now you are off and flying. Now you're off and flying. So I think we might have a few minutes for questions, maybe just a few minutes today, because we started late. Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned sugar.
Yes. Oh.
Mic check. You mentioned sugar, and is it wrong? I'm thinking I love fruits.
Yes.
I'm having at least 3 fruits every morning.
Yep.
And sometimes maybe I'm binging on cherries, like last 2 days.
Yep.
And but usually I don't. But I'm saying, is it wrong? Like I usually have like 3 fruits, like a huge mango, some berries, or like a case of strawberries. You know,
Yeah.
not the huge case, but one of those that are 2 for $5. I eat one. You know. So how does that work? Is that but I feel I crave it.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So is it the sugar I crave, or it's so tasty?
I mean, it could be a little bit, but fruits are high in a natural sugar called fructose, and we can actually make better. There's so many different choices when it comes to fruits. So we can choose fruits that are dark, like the dark berries. They're so excellent, amazing for us because they're so high in antioxidants. They're also high in a chemical that's called anthocyanin. So those chemicals are what gives those fruits that color. So the mangoes, or even the blueberries, blackberries, cherries, hoscup berries. There's another really dark one, elderberries, though those are quite tart. Yep, the blackberries, they all contain these natural anti-inflammatory properties. So I would say eating a lot of the darker fruits is fine, and even eating sour fruits like Granny Smith apples, though a lot of people are like, I don't like it, not sweet enough. But Granny Smith apples actually help to regulate blood sugar. So when it comes to fruits, it's more about which fruits are you eating. So if you're eating lots and lots of berries, that's amazing. If you're eating lots of dark fruits, that's amazing. It's natural sugar, but it's also packaged in a little bit of fiber, and it has a lot of healing properties. Yep.
I crave it.
You crave it? Yep. I don't think that's natural. That might not be the dopamine addiction. But if you love it, it's interesting, because if you eat something, and while you're eating it, you're like, oh, I love it, I love it. Your brain does secrete dopamine, and it does cause cravings. But that's a good thing to crave, as opposed to sugar. Yes?
Yes, sleep can be a problem sometimes. And you talk about high-quality sleep, and not to drink before going to bed or during, when you wake up to, go to the washroom. But if your mouth is dry and you feel you need a drink, how does that work?
So I would ask, why is your mouth dry? And
Right.
often people have dry mouth. I mean, it could be a side effect of certain medications, but often people have dry mouth because they haven't actually hydrated enough during the day. And then at night, they feel thirsty and their mouth's dry, and then they're drinking at night. So the answer would be to hydrate earlier, like to hydrate during the day. But there's a way that you can use water. If weight loss is one of your goals, you can use water as a weight loss tool, and you still hydrate really well. So it's like a win-win. If you drink water, even like 500 milliliters of water, 30 to 45 minutes 45 to 30 minutes before your meals. And then after your meal, you wait about 30 minutes and you drink water again. So it's like a water sandwich. Then you probably won't eat as much. In studies, they've been found that this helps with weight loss. But on top of that, you'll be hydrating during the day. And then you're not thirsty at night. If the dry mouth is actually for two other reasons. One is anxiety. Anxiety actually triggers this stress response that I was talking about, which causes the salivary glands to not secrete as much saliva. So if it's anxiety, that's a little different. And if it's the medications you're taking, that's a little bit different. But usually it's because you're not hydrating during the day and then you're thirsty at night. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What about breathing? The one that you breathe through your mouth.
Like during the day?
Nights.
Right.
You start to
Yep.
sleep on your side, then you turn, you find yourself on your back, and the next thing you know, you're...
Yeah. So there are certain reasons why people are mouth breathers at night, and that does cause thirst, but it's because your mouth is open. One of them is sometimes people might have sleep apnea, meaning they're snoring, but they're snoring a lot to the point where they're actually snoring and then they stop breathing, and then your body causes you to snore some more. So there are a variety of reasons why people have sleep apnea. One of them is just having extra weight. Having extra weight causes sleep apnea because a lot of the fat in this area, like these muscles, all get really relaxed, and then they're pressing against the airway, and it makes it difficult to breathe. But there are other reasons, nasal issues, etc. So if snoring is the issue, then we'd have to talk about all the reasons why people snore, which we might do at another time. But I think we'll take one more question, and then we'll see if there are any online questions, maybe? Or let's take one more question. Yes, go ahead.
All right, so just a quick one. I was taking notes. Could you repeat tip number 2 and number 7?
Repeat number 2 and number 7?
Yes, please.
Okay, number 2 from memory was thankfulness, and this is part of, hold on. This is part of mindful eating. So place thankfulness in your heart and in your mind before eating. They've actually found that when you place thankfulness, which is similar to gratitude, in your mind, it actually causes the secretion of some of the bliss hormones, meaning dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. So you digest your food better. You're in a more of a relaxed state. Number 7, eat until you are 2/3 full. There's a long explanation for that, which I'll explain tomorrow, which has to do with the different hormones that are secreted when our stomach stretches. And do not drink while eating. So eat till you're 2/3 full. Don't drink while eating. You want to allow your saliva to act as your your drink instead. It is 5 after 5. I'm not sure. Do we have time for any more questions? No?
Do we have any more questions? We can probably take one more, and if we have any online questions, we will take those. No online questions. All right, I see 2 hands. We will take those 2, and then we are going to repair downstairs for the blood pressure checks. All right, did I see a hand at the back? No hand at the back, sorry. Okay, so we'll take this hand in the front.
Yes, I just need some clarification pertaining to the eating and drinking, because even from our church setting and from when you go seminar with medical professionals, you always see people eat and drink, and then I wonder, is this thing really true? And, well, in my case, I like water food, because I say, if I have boiling, you have little edo, you might have some fish, you have carrot, and everything there is like, it goes down well, because that come like food. Another question is, it because of the temperature of what you drink. For example, in the morning time, you have your breakfast, you have bread, and then you have tea, whether it's milk or cocoa. And then if you eat and you drink something cold, it's because of the coldness of what you drink can kind of change the enzyme system or the digestive juice in the stomach that will pose a problem. That's why it's not good to eat and drink. I just need some explanation.
Okay, so your question is, why do we not drink while we're eating? In that's not so much the temperature of the food, more because of the enzymes that are in the saliva. So if you're drinking, then that would dilute the saliva, but on top of that, the saliva doesn't have the opportunity to really attack the food to start that conversion of carbohydrates into glucose. Does that make sense?
So like how I love my boiling.
What's boiling?
Boiling is a meal whereby you have like hello, you have little a water food.
Oh, it's soup.
It's not soup. Soup is
Okay.
something different.
It's like a stew, let's say, a stew.
Different way of soup.
Okay.
Soup is like when it's very fine, like it's blended with callaloo, and that is soup. You drink it from a glass. Boiling now is when you have hard food like hello, a little dashing that's good with yam, and you put some fish, or maybe you eat it with beans. That is boiling for me. Soup is
Okay.
no, that's not soup.
All right, okay.
Oh, no. Anyway, so regardless of what you're eating, even if you're eating something a little bit liquidy, even if it's not totally liquidy, but it's, let's say, stew-like, you still don't want to drink while you're eating that. And if it's a little bit liquidy, you probably wouldn't need to. But even with that food, you still want to keep it in your mouth for a little while. If there's chunks of, you mentioned edo, if there's chunks of some root vegetable or whatever it is in it, you want to chew and chew and chew and chew that. And if it's fully liquidy, a lot of people just kind of swallow that really fast. For a lot of my weight loss patients, I advise, I have a special smoothie for them to drink, and I still tell them to put it in their mouth, swish it around the mouth, so the saliva is still having the opportunity to really begin digesting the food, then swallow. So it's not so much whether it's liquidy or it's solid. You always want to give the saliva an opportunity. And I chew my smoothies. I mean, I put them in my mouth and I'll swish it and chew, 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 because I know what the saliva is doing. Then I swallow. So that's the general principle.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Right, so traditional food in the morning, you know, we eat bread, we eat egg and cereal and
I don't need any
what
of
have
those
you.
things. But
Right?
go on.
That's the traditional
Okay.
way of eating. What's the best meal in the morning?
Best meal in the morning. You'll have to come tomorrow to find out.
Yeah.
But they have done studies on weight loss, and they find that if you have a little more protein in the morning, then you tend to feel satiated. A meal where you're having something really starchy, most likely that's going to be converted into glucose really quickly, and then you won't feel satisfied. So within about an hour or two, you're going to feel hungry. But I advise to most people not to snack. You want food that's going to sustain you for about 4 to 4.5 hours before your next meal. So it would have to be something that's a nice mix of protein, fiber, maybe a little bit of carbohydrates, and starch. All of those mixed together. The worst thing to do is have something like a sugary muffin or a scone. And I actually don't encourage bread at breakfast time.
Yeah.
I'd encourage it at lunch.
Right, yeah. I'm not going to say any more until tomorrow
Oh, okay.
because, you know, I want you to share what you have to share.
Okay.
Thank you.
I also encourage making lunch the biggest meal. Instead of having a big, huge breakfast, make lunch your biggest meal, dinner your lightest meal, and breakfast your medium meal. So avoid those sugary, carby, starchy foods at breakfast, but make lunch your biggest meal. Go ahead. I think this will be the last question before we go downstairs.
Oh, well, I didn't want to deprive anybody else.
And this is Mama?
Yes.
Well, I wanted to know, what about a bowl of blueberries with yogurt on it for breakfast?
Yeah.
I have two questions.
You have two questions.
That's one. There's
Okay.
there's not enough protein in that to sustain you, is
Well,
there?
yogurt's actually high in protein.
Oh, okay.
But do you want to ask your, I'll answer your first question. Blueberries for breakfast, amazing. Amazing. They're natural anti-inflammatory. They do have fructose in it, but not too high in fructose. They're also high in antioxidants. They're actually doing research on the effects of blueberries in petri dishes, on cancer, etc. They're such a powerful superfood, and they're not so high in sugar that you're going to feel really hungry right after eating them. So I recommend berry bowls for breakfast. If you're adding yogurt, I don't eat any dairy, etc. I'm 100% plant-based. But you would be getting a little bit of protein in the yogurt. You could even do a plant-based yogurt.
Yeah.
But read the ingredients, because a lot of those yogurts, when you read the fine print, they're very high in sugar. So you want a non-sugar kind of yogurt. That's a nice combination.
Oh,
Go ahead.
good. But what if you add banana to that? Is that?
Not bad. I mean, bananas are fairly high in the glycemic index, meaning they're converted into sugar. But at least you're having it with some protein and some fiber. Bananas have natural fiber, but it's going to slow it down a little bit. But we're going to talk about starches and carbs tomorrow, because the rule is that you don't eat your carbs naked. I know you can't say that word in church, but you always want to eat your carbs dressed. So you want to combine the starchy foods with protein and with a little bit of fiber and with some fat, so they're not converted into glucose quickly and spiking your blood sugar. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. Was that your answer
No.
to you? That was 2 questions. You said bananas.
That was 1.5.
Okay.
Now, here's the other half. When I chew and chew and chew,
Yes.
then I lose the taste. And so it's not as pleasurable.
Ah, you're eating for pleasure.
Well, you might as well get that too.
Okay. You lose the taste a little bit because it's actually turning into liquid
round and
in your mouth. But, I mean, and it's beginning the digestive process in your mouth. But the benefits of doing it, I think, are greater than the taste. I think we are going to go downstairs now. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move downstairs, and we're going to do move downstairs and do blood pressure. But before we do that, can we end with a prayer? Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, we're so thankful just for the opportunity to come together in your house. Your word says that your house shall be called a house of prayer. So we're thankful to come together, Lord, to talk about health. I pray that what we talked about today will be very beneficial for everyone who heard. And I pray that you'll help us to make changes as we go. We say these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I'll see everybody downstairs for blood pressure monitoring.